Breaking tonight, two huge stories potentially impacting America's standing in the world and setting the agenda for President-elect Donald Trump's administration. Welcome to the Kelly File. I'm Sandra Smith in for Megyn Kelly. First, just hours ago, in a surprise move, President Obama deals a parting shot to the Israeli government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by abstaining from a vote at the United Nations to pass an unprecedented resolution declaring the Jewish state to be in violation of international law. Also tonight, President-elect Trump is also raising concerns that he may shatter decades of U.S. policy when it comes to nuclear weapons, suggesting in a tweet that he may, quote, strengthen and expand America's nuclear firepower. Then appearing to double down on that in a private conversation that was reported on another network.
President-elect told you what?
Let it be an arms race. We will outmatch them at every pass.
And outlast them all.
And outlast them all.
That setting off alarm bells, with even Russian President Vladimir Putin responding. In moments, we'll be joined by longtime Donald Trump supporter, Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy, and former Assistant Defense Secretary Larry Korb. But first, we go to Kevin Corke, who's traveling with the President Barack Obama, in Honolulu, Hawaii. Kevin?
Well, Sandra, listen, get ready for tweet reaction stories for the foreseeable future. And by the way, every now and again, you'll see President-elect Trump sort of put out a tweet, and that will drive the news cycle. And that is certainly the case, as you just pointed out, a very interesting story relating to a tweet. Now, we all know that President-elect Trump has called the U.S. military the greatest the world has ever seen, and rightly so. He's also made it clear, however, that he wants to enhance the military, and that includes modernization of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. But part of the tweet yesterday really raised eyebrows all over the globe. He said, in part, the United States must greatly strengthen and expand its nuclear capability until such time as the world comes to its senses regarding nukes. Okay, so it was that comment about expanding that has a lot of people wondering, well, what did he mean by that? And obviously, the second part is, what's the Russian reaction to it? If you listen carefully to Russian President Vladimir Putin, he seemed to sort of shrug his shoulders at it. Take a listen.
As for the newly elected president, Mr. Trump, there is nothing new here. During his election campaign, he has spoken about the need to strengthen U.S. nuclear capabilities. There is nothing unusual about it.
Meanwhile, Transition Comms Director Jason Miller tried to clarify things just a bit, saying, in part, President-elect Trump was referring to the threat of nuclear proliferation and the critical need to prevent it, particularly to and among terrorist organizations and unstable rogue regimes. He also emphasized the need to improve and modernize our deterrent capability as a vital way to pursue peace through strength. Very interesting use of the phrase peace through strength there, to sort of, for those of you old enough to remember, a little Reagan-esque. So maybe drawing from the past, Sandra, to describe the future of U.S. nuclear capability and deterrent. And in case you're wondering, no, the White House didn't have anything to say about it, not even on background. They're steering clear of it. Sandra, back to you.
Kevin Corke, thank you. And we are getting new reaction to President-elect Trump's handling of foreign policy issues from some of America's most respected leaders. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates telling the Washington Post, quote, there is some value, the president-elect's disruptive approach, in the U.S. not being so reliably passive. Congressman Sean Duffy is one of the first members of Congress to support Donald Trump, and Larry Korb is a former Assistant Defense Secretary and a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Congressman Duffy, I'll start with you first. This is sparking new concerns about the president-elect's policy on nuclear arms.
Listen, I think it's refreshing to a lot of people across America. You have Donald Trump responding to Putin, who was talking about strengthening his own nuclear arsenal. And the fact that America has been so passive over the last 8 years that has emboldened not just Russia but China. But back to Russia, you have Putin, who went to the Ukraine, to Crimea. Now he's in the Middle East for the first time since the end of the Cold War. Russia thinks that they can push us around. Donald Trump pushing back forcefully with his tweet says, listen, there's a new sheriff in the White House. He's going to be fully engaged in a way that says we are going to build up our own nuclear arsenal. We're going to modernize it and make sure that we can meet any threat that exists in the world, including that comes from Russia. I think is heartening and refreshing. And I think this is what Bob Gates is talking about. He's a little bit unpredictable, which I think gives him better negotiating power as he deals not just with Russia, but the rest of the world.
Unpredictable, to say the least. I mean, Larry, everybody's trying to make sense of the order of events here. It's this tweet and this leader saying this. I mean, it did appear that Trump's response, his tweet was a response to Vladimir Putin, because it came in just a couple hours after we heard that pledge from Putin, saying he was pledged to enhance his country's nuclear forces. But then you heard Putin say, hey, there's nothing new here.
Well, there isn't. We have an arms agreement with Russia that says by 2018, both of us are going to be down to 1,550 nuclear weapons. In order to get that treaty ratified by the Senate, President Obama had to promise to modernize our nuclear forces. We have a $1 trillion modernization program already underway. And basically, if in fact you want to expand, that means you'd have to tear up all the arms treaties going back to, President Reagan. And again, when you put Bob Gates in with nuclear weapons, when I was in government working for President Reagan, he did not want Reagan to negotiate with Gorbachev about nuclear weapons. So when it comes to him, he doesn't have a great deal of credibility on this issue. And I think it's rather ironic that Congressman Duffy is saying that, because the person whose seat he took in the Congress, Melvin Laird, who I also work with, he was the one who said, we don't need nuclear superiority. What are you going to do with it? We need to put these funds into conventional weapons, and that's why he worked with President Nixon to get the first arms control agreement with the Soviets.
I mean, Congressman, when you look at Kellyanne Conway as campaign manager and now holds a chief position in his administration, Kellyanne Conway said this is effectively about posturing, trying to clarify some of Donald Trump's tweets. She said he's making the point that this is about nuclear proliferation in the face of rogue nations and regimes that are stockpiling weapons.
And then Donald Trump comes out and maybe pushes back on his own team and staff in kind of an odd way. But, back to Larry. Larry had a chance to work for Ronald Reagan, and everyone thought that Ronald Reagan was going to start the Third World War. He was too aggressive. He was a cowboy. But he understood that he could bring strength. With American strength, he would bring peace. Mm-hmm. And we all know, Sandra, that on the playground in America, bullies go after the weak guys, not the tough kid on the playground. With Donald Trump, a new transition from the last 8 years, that strength will bring peace to America. Larry saw that in the 80s. We can see that again in 2016.
Wow. Well, all right. We'll keep following it. Sorry, Larry, we've got to leave it there. Congressman Larry Korb, thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay.
Breaking tonight, an outpouring of outrage from some, celebration from others, after President Obama directs his UN ambassador to allow passage of an unprecedented United Nations resolution condemning settlement construction in Israel. In moments, we will speak to Governor Mike Huckabee, a frequent visitor to Israel, who is calling this a betrayal of Israel. But first, correspondent David Lee Miller has the latest from the United Nations in New York City. David Lee?
Sandra, some UN observers say the vote today underscores a radical shift in U.S. policy. For the first time now in nearly 4 decades, the United States has failed to exercise its veto power in stopping a resolution addressing Israeli settlements. Before the vote, the U.S. would not disclose what it was going to do, but many Israelis did fear that there was going to be what they called some type of Obama December surprise. The relationship between the U.S. president and the Israeli prime minister has been very strained over the last several months and longer, and many feared this vote would be the consequence. A short time ago, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations cast her vote abstaining when it came to this resolution. She said it does not diminish U.S. support for Israel. Here's more of what Samantha Power had to say about the reasoning behind the U.S. position.
Some may cast the U.S. vote as a sign that we have finally given up on a two-state solution. Nothing could be further from the truth.
And a short time ago, we heard a tweet from the president-elect Donald Trump. He said, and I quote, "As to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. Others have also been speaking out very publicly following the U.S. failure to use its veto on both sides of the aisle. New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer, John McCain, as well as South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham, all very critical of the U.S. position. Back to you.
All right, David Lee Miller, thank you. Here now, Governor Mike Huckabee, who has been deeply involved for years with issues involving Israel, frequently visiting Israel and meeting with Israeli government officials at the highest levels. Governor Huckabee, your response to this breaking news today?
Sandra, I am so outraged I can't even hardly contain myself. What Obama did today was basically extend a real nice final farewell and wave to Israel and to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He just bothered to use one finger in the middle of his hand to do it. This is the most amazing position he could have taken. If Donald Trump gets to, the first thing he does, I hope, is send some jackhammers over to Turtle Bay neighborhood in Manhattan and jackhammer the whole United Nations off into the East River and float it to wherever it needs to go. But this is an insult, not just to Israel, but this is an insult to every person who loves freedom. And when people use the term settlements, they may think of the Israelis building, a bunch of tents or mobile homes. These settlements are communities and neighborhoods with schools and curbs and gutters and synagogues and shops and permanent structures where people live and raise their families. And Judea and Samaria belong to Israel. Obama is even saying that the Western Wall ought to be part of territory that's given back. This is insane. This is so beyond anything we've seen in 40 years. It's just stunning.
Well, let me tell you the first thing that the president-elect did do, Donald Trump tweeting out after the vote, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. What do you expect the president-elect to do? What will his response be, or should it be, Governor Huckabee?
I think he ought to say that we're not going to continue to spend money funding the UN if they're going to be doing stupid and, frankly, idiotic things that are hurtful to any hope of peace. There's no peace ever going to happen from going along with the state-sponsored terrorist of Iran. Here's what we've done, Sandra. For the past few years under this administration, we have been kissing the backside of the Iranians, the largest sponsor of terrorism in the world, and we have been kicking the backside of the only real, true, loyal friend we have in the entire Middle East, the Israelis. Now, somebody explain why that makes any sense, even in a world of insanity like we sometimes see in the diplomatic world. This doesn't make sense. It's a clear indication that President Obama, no matter what he says, clearly is not cordial or even supportive of the free and democratic process of peace that lives in Israel right now.
Let me share with you
the
words of one Israeli official prior to the vote happening, slamming President Obama as well as Secretary of State John Kerry for being behind what he calls a shameful move against Israel at the UN. He called this an abandonment of Israel, which breaks decades of U.S. policy. Obviously, this makes an already icy relationship with the U.S. and Israel even icier.
Well, it's interesting that even leading Democrats like Chuck Schumer and others, I think Sherrod Brown from Ohio, have also said this is not a good policy. This is not a good position. This is not about partisanship. This isn't Democrat versus Republican. This is about common sense versus insanity. And for President Obama to push a policy that embraces the Iranians and then goes and brushes back our one true friend, and to somehow pretend that Israel doesn't have a right to protect themselves, to live in a secure environment, a place for their people to live. And Judea and Samaria are not illegal territories. They are the God-given boundaries that Israel has rightfully taken possession of.
It'll be interesting to see what Chuck Schumer's response is now of an administration that he's been so supportive of, knowing that right before the vote, he said he had spoken to the administration numerous times, Governor, as recently as this morning, the morning of the vote, and in the strongest term possible urged them to veto this resolution. So this will continue. Governor Huckabee, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sandra.
More troubling news regarding a key U.S. ally as we learn that the Berlin terror suspect has been killed by police after traveling through not one but two different European nations. Former DOJ attorney J. Christian Adams is here on why he thinks political correctness is to blame. Before we ask former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie and former President Clinton staffer Matt Bennett to react. Plus, we are just 1 month out from President-elect Trump's inauguration. So what should we expect? We will talk with senior advisor for the Trump transition team, Katrina Pearson, about that.
I can tell you that this is not the Academy Awards. It's the inauguration for the people, the way this has been the election for the people.
Breaking tonight, a dramatic and deadly end to the international manhunt for the Berlin terror suspect. The week-long search for Anis Amri ending early this morning in a shootout with police in Italy. This comes as ISIS releases a new video today showing just how radicalized this individual had become, despite being known to multiple authorities. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palkot is live in Berlin with more.
Sandra, we are learning more, but there are questions, too, about the killing of 24-year-old Tunisian Anis Amri, the man believed to be responsible for the deadly attack here at the Berlin Christmas market on Monday night. First of all, officials are trying to figure out how Amri made the trip some 600 miles from Berlin to Milan via France. That was the Italian officials' account, but the French officials tonight are saying they can't confirm he was in their country. Already, the finger pointing is starting. However exactly he did it, he got down there. All the while, he was the most wanted man in Europe. Even so, he was gunned down just by a routine police foot patrol in Milan. When he was asked for his identity papers, he refused, and then the shootout ensued. Now, the video just released today underscores the connection with ISIS and this truck attacker. In it, Amri says that he will kill Crusader pigs. He also pledges his allegiance to the terror group. That was put on the website just a couple hours after he was killed. In this case, timing is everything. Now, the big question is whether he had support of an ISIS and Islamist network, and maybe more importantly, how he was able to operate in Germany for about 18 months leading up to the attack, when the officials here were trying to deport him, when he was under surveillance. More and more critics here are saying that it's German Chancellor Angela Merkel's open-door immigration policy in 2015 that could have contributed to the problems. First of all, the border was swamped when he came in the summer of 2015. They weren't watching. And then, when he was moving around, committing his crimes, planning this attack, the immigration offices, the customs offices were also swamped, so they weren't keeping tabs on him. To, apparently, deadly effect. Sandra.
Greg, thank you. Our next guest seems to think that political correctness may be to blame for the fact that this suspect, who had a lengthy rap sheet, hadn't been deported, suggesting on Twitter, quote, Germany seems to have lost the ability to defend themselves because of an ideology opposed to the safety of Germans. J. Christian Adams is a former attorney for the Department of Justice. Thank you for being here tonight, sir. So what are you hearing from the people of Germany in the wake of this attack and their ability to defend themselves? Who do they blame for this?
Well, they blame the ones who, with any sense, this civilizational guilt, this decades-long inability to defend themselves. Germans were attacked not because they lacked the tools to defend themselves, that they lacked the will. This is going back to World War II, the Germans have embraced this idea, they call it liberal democratic values, that basically take away all the tools they have to defend Germany. You don't see these attacks happening in Poland or Hungary or all of the other Eastern European countries who are fighting the war on terror along with us. These attacks happened at a German Christmas market because of ideologies in Germany that stop their ability to defend themselves.
There's concern that we're losing our ability to defend ourselves here. Do you see any similarities to what happened with this man? I mean, he avoided deportation several times. His ability to move around, considering his past. There are concerns about our borders here. What similarities are you seeing?
Well, thankfully for America, Germany's further down the path than the United States. But look at all of the similar things. open borders, a loud lobby group within each country that doesn't want to shut down the borders from these threats. You have a loud lobby group in each country that talks about democratic values that prevent you from doing the things necessary to protect yourself. Those aren't democratic values. Those are suicidal values. You have in Germany and out throughout Europe this utopian idea of these open borders that allowed this murderer to go from Germany to France to Italy, finally caught 600 miles away when he should have been caught almost instantaneously. There is an attitude in Europe, particularly in Germany, with this civilizational guilt that the Germans have that restrain their ability to fight this Islamic threat.
What does the future look like for Germany and for Europe that continues to deal with this severe problem?
Sadly, carnage seems to be a requirement before somebody realizes the error of their ways. That's now happening in Germany. Germans are realizing, as they are throughout Europe, in England, in Italy, that they cannot continue this way. Notice how they caught him in Italy. It was a, may I please see your papers stop. You know, one of these politically incorrect policing steps. And that's how they finally caught up with the guy in Italy.
All right. Well, thankfully they got him. J. Christian Adams, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Good to see you. Well, the fact that this suspect managed to make it through not one, but two different countries before being caught is drawing new attention to the president-elect's plan for, quote, extreme vetting of some Muslim immigrants. And while critics were quick to pounce on his suggestion, his plan has been proven 100% correct. They seem to be ignoring what President Obama is doing with respect to Mr. Trump's plans. Carl Higbee is a former Navy SEAL and Trump supporter. Matt Bennett is a former deputy assistant to President Clinton. Carl, good to see you. Good to see both of you. Carl, you talk about this all the time. You are behind this extreme vetting that the president-elect has proposed. Would it work, and it would prevent something like this from happening here?
Well, I believe so, absolutely. And look, you had this guy, the shooter in Turkey, who took down the Russian diplomat. He was vetted after the coup, and 20,000 police officers were let go, and he slipped through the cracks. And this is them vetting them in their own country. You think we can adequately vet people overseas that want to come here? Absolutely not. I'm even for going the next step further and stopping immigration from that area until we can find what's going on. But right now, we can't afford to bring people into this country who we don't know where they are, and we don't know what their intentions are.
And Matt, and all the while, everybody's talking about Trump's extreme vetting. They're ignoring President Obama's actions in the White House, dismantling this visitor registry before Trump can revive it, as he has talked about.
Well, the visitor registry hasn't been used since it was passed 15 years ago. But look, we already have extreme vetting. It takes 2 years for a refugee to make it to the United States if they're coming from that part of the world. And we do not see anything like what is going on in Europe for two reasons. One is they're just a lot closer to the Middle East, and the folks are coming directly out of Syria and over borders to Western Europe. And second, our Muslim community is much better assimilated than it is in Europe, and we see vastly fewer problems and nothing like we've seen in Paris and Belgium and now in Berlin.
So what are we going to expect to see from the president-elect? Here we are, we're about to enter the new year, Carl. And when he was asked whether or not he still intends to set up this registry for Muslims and impose a temporary ban on Muslims, he said, "You know my plans." What does that mean? What is he going to do?
Well, I think he's going to reinstill this thing that Obama's taking out. And look, it hasn't been used since 2011. It was used up till then. The fact is, though, that Obama's dismantling this. It makes you wonder whose side is President Obama on here, because he's certainly not on the side of protecting Americans. Now, I think Donald Trump is going to put...
absolutely. I mean, that is offensive and ridiculous.
Oh, here we go. Oh, it's offensive. Anytime you make a point to somebody who doesn't agree with you on the left, it's called offensive.
Okay, so Matt, Matt, I'm going to get you back in here, but to be clear for everybody listening, we're talking about the National Security Entry-Exit Registration System, otherwise known as NSEERS. Your point is what, Matt?
My point, first of all, when Carl said you wonder what side President Obama is on, that is what's offensive. I don't take offense to everything he said, just to that. And the fact of the matter is, we already have...
But Matt, how do you explain the timing of this? Why would the president do this now, with just a few days left to go in office? Why would this be a goal? Why would it be anything other than symbolic?
I don't know. Look, there's a bunch of things that presidents do when new parties are coming in to replace them. to kind of cement their legacy. I really have no idea why he's doing it at this point. But as Carl himself pointed out, it hasn't been used in 7 years or 6 years.
But by doing this, it slows President-elect Trump's ability to revive it or whatever he wants to do, whatever his plans are for it. It certainly slows that down. Carl Higbee, last word to you.
I think what's clear is President Obama is putting these refugee statuses and these refugee programs above the American citizens, and I think it's disgraceful.
All right. Thanks to both of you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Coming up, the president-elect's new press secretary made major news on our air last night when he seemed to refuse a direct answer on whether or not we can expect traditional press briefings under a Trump administration. Teslin Figaro, Molly Hemingway are here next on whether this is a good or a bad thing. You had hinted with Megyn Kelly on this program last week, maybe daily press briefings aren't needed. Are you going to do away with those? You had hinted with Megyn Kelly on this program last week, maybe daily press briefings aren't needed. Are you going to do away with those?
It's not a question of getting rid of certain things or maybe we add certain things, but I think that we want to be innovative, entrepreneurial as we look at all of these positions and all of these government agencies.
So will there be daily press briefings?
I believe that we'll have daily briefings, but maybe we add an element to them. Maybe not everything's on camera. Maybe we bring more people into the process.
The president-elect's new press secretary, Sean Spicer, has had to answer quite a few questions since appearing on our program last night and suggesting we could see some big changes with the way the new administration deals with the press. But despite the president-elect's contentious relationship with the media, who he has referred to as quite dishonest and corrupt, some folks are suggesting that change could be a good thing in this case. Teslin Figaro is principal of the Teslin Figaro Communications Group. Molly Hemingway is senior editor of The Federalist. Molly, what kind of changes do you think are coming?
Right. So when we've heard from transition officials that they might be willing to shake up what's happening in these briefings, people get very nervous, and they haven't been very specific about what those changes might be, but I'm actually quite optimistic about at least the possibility of change. These daily press briefings have just become opportunities for grandstanding on both sides. You have the reporters who just ask questions designed to make for a good hit that night on their television show, and you have the press secretary who's just sort of dripping with condescension and disdain for the question. We get very little actual information, and these things really could use a freshening up or a change. I don't know if that's more press briefings, different people asking the questions, fewer press briefings, maybe having them daily but not having them on camera. There are all sorts of things that I would hope that both sides, the Trump transition and the press, could look at for how to improve the process of getting information.
Well, Teslin, the incoming White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, did sort of suggest that in that interview last night. He said maybe not everything is on camera for these press briefings. Maybe we bring more people into the process. It's hard to imagine what would work best or better than it is now. What would you like to see change?
Well, I think he's going to continue to do what got him in the office. Whether people see that as better or not better, he's going to continue to engage the American people, even through Twitter. The first time that we've had a president that will actually tweet his own tweets. There will certainly be press briefings, and some of that information will be transparent. But I think overall, what people are going to have to get used to, and that's especially those of us who are in the media, is that Mr. Trump is not going to allow the media to control his narrative. So even if his press secretary gets out and says something that he doesn't necessarily agree with, we can pretty much brace ourselves for a tweet that will follow shortly after on what it, what it really meant. So I think this is, certainly is, for those of us in the media communications, an exciting time to see things change. You will see a lot of authenticity. You will see things that will be challenged. Like they talked about his comments on nuclear war, that nuclear.
It does seem like the American people, though, Molly, do think that that's quite refreshing to see the president-elect, not yet the president. We'll see how that all works out. But Sean Spicer did indicate that the tweeting will continue. The American people sort of feel like they're closer to the person running this country when he himself is putting out a message and it's not going through all these different channels.
There are a lot of benefits to that. You do get to hear directly from the president-elect without the filter, and that filter has posed a lot of problems where people try and tell you what something means instead of just letting people speak for themselves. At the same time, if you're trying to hold people accountable, you can't let them control the transmission of information. That happened far too much under the Obama administration, where the press, either because they tended to be liberal or just because they really liked Obama, they sort of let that administration get away with being not very transparent, not very accountable. And I'm thinking that maybe because the press is so hostile to Donald Trump, they will hold him more accountable and work together to get answers about what our government is doing. You know, this is really about something much bigger than who the president is, but about a huge federal government and how it's spending money, how it's held accountable. And the press really needs to do a much better job of holding our highest elected officials accountable. And they would have been in a much better position to demand that if they hadn't been so compliant during the current administration.
All right, Tesla and Molly, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up with 1 month to go until President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, there are several reports of a star-studded snub for the 45th president's big day, including many former commander-in-chiefs. Katrina Pearson is here on that next. 1 month from tonight, Donald Trump will officially be our next president. And with time quickly running out until the January 20th inauguration day, there are new questions about how huge and star-studded the event will actually be. In moments, senior advisor for Trump transition team, Katrina Pearson, will be here to respond and give us some details. But first, Peter Ducey reports from Palm Beach, Florida, with more inaugural agenda. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Sandra. The president-elect says he doesn't really care if Hollywood stars or recording artists want to mingle with him in D.C. inauguration weekend, because he says he saw that happening with his Democratic opponent for the last few months, and it didn't do her much good. So he took to Twitter, as he often does, to say the so-called A-list celebrities are all wanting tickets to the inauguration, but look what they did for Hillary. Nothing. I want the people. And this morning, the newly minted press secretary, Sean Spicer, said looks can be deceiving and that the president-elect has been getting calls from a lot of A-listers who want to be front and center on January 20th.
It's amazing to me how many of these folks, these so-called celebrities, will pick up the phone and call him when no one's looking and say, hey, I'd like to be part of this, or can I talk to you about something? They want to
I can't do it in public.
Right, I can't do it in public. But they call him in private.
Some of the A-list celebrities who have either been rumored to be part of the program or have said they declined invitations to perform are Elton John, Kiss, David Foster, and Garth Brooks, who previously suggested that he would see singing for a new president as a form of service, but he's still not going to go. So, what kind of entertainment should inaugural guests expect? The host committee emailed me today to say the 16-year-old singer Jackie Evancho of America's Got Talent fame is going to be there to sing the national anthem. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir will be in town, and so will the Radio City Rockettes, who are going to be there to perform, even though at least one dancer took to social media to say that she doesn't want to. This dancer claimed that she was being forced to perform, but the parent company that owns the Rockettes later came out and said that you're only considered for an event as a Rockette if you volunteer, and that for the inauguration, they've had more volunteers than they have spots for dancers in the routine. Sandra. All right, Peter Ducey, thank you. Well, besides the celebrities boycotting right now, President Jimmy Carter is the only former president to RSVP for Mr. Trump's inauguration. Katrina Pearson is a senior advisor for the Trump transition team. Katrina, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Sandra.
So Carter's the only one to respond. What about the Clintons? What about George W. Bush?
Well, there will be announcements made as that comes up, but this is a celebration that many of the people of this country have been waiting on. There's only a handful of us that saw it coming miles and miles away. And the focus isn't going to be on celebrities or even politicians for that matter. The focus is going to be on freedom. It's going to be on American patriotism, unity, and what actually brought this campaign across the finish line, and that is the American people, just as the president-elect has said.
So the president-elect tweets out, A-list celebrities are seeking tickets. They want to be there, but he doesn't want them. He wants the people. Well, that's giving his critics an opportunity to say that's because A-list celebrities don't want to be there. Well, which is it?
Well, look, I think, like Sean Spicer said, I mean, it's sort of like the campaign when we had all of these supporters behind the scenes saying we support you but didn't want to go publicly. The same thing is happening among these A-listers, but as the president-elect says, it's not about the A-list celebrities. It's about the capital A Americans. This has been the mantra of his campaign, and it's going to be the mantra of his administration.
What do you expect? What is that day going to look like, Katrina? I mean, considering the impact that Donald Trump has had, the unprecedented campaign that he ran, what is that day going to look like? How will it be different than other inaugural days?
Well, I think that the sentiments that are out there, there is hope finally in this country. A lot of people feel relieved. The markets look great. People feel, confident about their future. And the president-elect is still filling stadiums all across this country with hardworking Americans. You're going to see a lot of people show up to watch this inauguration. It's going to be historic. It's going to be very exciting. And the inaugural committee has done a fantastic job putting together programs that they will be releasing. So if viewers want tickets, there is a website, 58pic2017.org. Brad Parscale from the campaign developed a great website. And follow everyone on Twitter at Trump Inaugural for all those updates.
So we also have reports that Donald Trump has tapped the Beach Boys, currently fronted by Mike Love, for those who are wondering, to perform at the inauguration. Do you know anything about that?
Well, no, and I can't confirm
That's People
that.
Magazine
The Trump Inaugural Committee.
Yeah.
The Trump Inaugural Committee will make those announcements, so I highly suggest going to the website and following them on Twitter.
Okay. Not performing, we do know Gene Simmons' wife told TMZ that Kiss politely declined. So it's unbelievable, the speculation that is out there. But perhaps more importantly, because it is tradition that all former presidents are invited to at least attend the ceremony when the new president is sworn in, President Barack Obama, 2009, enjoyed the presence of all 4 living presidents. So it is going to be a big moment to see who turns out for Donald Trump. Will Hillary Clinton be there with former President Bill Clinton?
Well, this wasn't a historic, this wasn't a traditional campaign by any means. I mean, we saw the exact same thing happen during the convention. So I would suspect we might see something similar. But again, the president-elect has always been focused on the American people, and that will be the center of the focus of this inauguration, not a politician or an A-list celebrity.
All right, Katrina Pearson, thanks for being here tonight. Good to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, when we return, the special group helping wounded warriors spend the holidays with their loved ones, and what you can do to help make this Christmas season special for our nation's heroes. Next. We want to highlight a special cause this Christmas season. Luke's Wings is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping wounded warriors and veterans unite with their loved ones. Here with me now, Sergeant James Pierce has been a recipient of the great support of Luke's Wings. Fletcher Gill is the founder and CEO of Luke's Wings. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Sergeant Pierce, I want to start with you first. What does this organization mean to you, considering you were very much helped by it?
Yes, so the organization has helped me out for the last 4 years. They've flown me home several times, but also recently they helped me find the love of my life. I just got engaged about a month ago.
Congratulations. That's wonderful. Should I get into details? How did that introduction happen?
Sure, just ask away.
No, that's lovely. I mean, it sounds like altogether, Fletcher, you have started an amazing thing. And I mean, you took a major, I guess you could call it risk doing so, because to found this thing, January 2008 till January 2012, you took a salary of $1 per year. Why was this cause so important for you?
Well, thanks for having us. Merry Christmas to everybody watching. It was important to me for a lot of reasons. I get that question a lot, and it's interesting because the answer is sometimes different. But, you know, I lost my father without a chance to say goodbye to him. That was part of it. You know, I know what happened on 9/11. I know what we're doing. I know the fight we're fighting. And to see our fellow Americans go into battle on our behalf, they come back injured, you know, and we found out in 2007 that our wounded warriors at the military hospitals like Walter Reed, they get some support in terms of travel for their family. They're allowed 3 people to come in on the government's dime. 1 person gets to stay, and then the other 2 have to go home. Once the person who stays actually also goes home, then the coverage ends. Now, we realized that that was a huge problem for the families and for our wounded warriors. The mothers were instinctively staying by the bedside. They wouldn't leave. They wouldn't go home because they knew, you know, that it would be hard to come back again on their own dime. And so we stepped in 2008 And we started communicating with the families and saying, look, don't worry about travel. From here on out, we're going to take care of all of your flights. And that's what we started doing. In 2008, we delivered 18 airplane tickets. 19, actually, if I remember correctly, and now we do that every 2 to 3 days.
That's a beautiful thing. And in Sergeant Pierce, in your case, you were injured by a suicide bomber in Afghanistan in October 1st. The attack was in 2012. The attack killed 3 of your teammates. This is an unbelievable cause, I'm sure. What specifically happened there, and how did Luke's Wings step in and help you and your family?
Yes, like he was saying earlier, so there's only one family member that is allowed to stay with you at Walter Reed, and they flew my mom and dad back home because, you know, obviously wore them out a little bit, so they would almost change shifts, and Luke's Wings came in and provided the flights for us.
How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I can't complain at all.
So good to hear that, and I'm sure, Fletcher, that's music to your ears, that you helped a family, you helped this man that sacrificed so much for our country. You've got this program, No Soldier Spends Christmas Alone. How does that work, and what are you seeing in the next couple of days?
Well, thank you. So in the last week or two, we've provided, I think, 145 flights, making sure that all of our wounded warriors are with their families on Christmas morning. We also provide flights throughout the year, and of course, this is a busy time for us, to our veterans in hospice care, so they're never alone as they're passing away. And we are rolling out a new program for our fallen officers, so any police officer who's attacked on a Blue Lives Matter type of situation, we can step in and provide flights for that family. Let me quickly say that to James, he is a success story. Having his loved ones with him the whole time since 2012, of course, has helped. And I want to extend a very special gift to James. He doesn't know this, but SRS Distribution out of Texas and the SRS Raise the Roof Foundation, big supporters of Luke's Wings, they are going to be providing all of the flights vis-a-vis Luke's Wings to James and your family for your upcoming wedding.
Whoa.
So, yep.
How does that feel, Sergeant Pierce?
Oh boy, I can't wait.
So Merry Christmas to you, and on behalf of all of us, we love you and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Sergeant Pierce. And Fletcher, thank you so much for what you're doing and for our servicemen and women. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Of course. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
All right, for more information on Luke's Wings or to find out how you can help, just log on to lukeswings.org. We will be right back. There's just one day left until Christmas, and time is running out to get your shopping done. But don't worry, we have the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Meghan's new book, Settle for More. Here are just a few of the reviews. Frank_RB96 tweets, just finished Settle for More. Megyn Kelly, truly inspiring men and women, along with young adults, can take away valuable lessons from this. And Brianna Chamberlain tweets, Settle for More is inspiring and relatable. Thanks for sharing your story, Megyn Kelly, and for making me confident in my ability to shape mine. Philip Jelinas says teachers could learn something from Megyn Kelly. Hashtag Settle for More. As teachers, we must demand more. Get your copy of Settle for More now. It is a perfect gift for anyone on your list or for yourself, by the way. It's a great book to help you unwind over the long holiday break. Hopefully you have one. Thanks for joining us, everyone, tonight. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'm Sandra Smith, and this is The Kelly File.